Hello and welcome. My name is Blair Harris, alongside Justin Roberts behind the camera.
Yahoo!
Today we're going to do a walk around of a 2018 BMW R1200GS.
Non-TFT.
This is a standard dash bike. Let's get started. The point of these videos is to offer a little more detail for anyone who's purchased one of these bikes or is interested in these bikes. Our walk around at the time of purchase, we tried to be very detail oriented, but you know, during the excitement of picking up a new toy, we may miss things, and this is an opportunity for us to just go back over with you. So this bike is a cross-spoke wheel machine. The recommended air pressure for the tires is on a decal on the frame. There are various places of the bike. In this case, it's near the head tube. 36 psi in the front, 42 psi in the rear. This bike is equipped with a center stand, side stand. Your bike may come with a dynamic braking system, or dynamic brake light rather. All of the bikes purchased or built at Eurosport Asheville come with an SAE pigtail. This is a standard battery tender pigtail. I'll show you.
Little SAE action.
Yeah, man. Because we're going to be using the bike turned on and demonstrate a few things, I've got it plugged into a battery tender just so we can preserve the battery. On this side of the bike, you'll notice the oil fill plug. And down here is an oil level sight glass. There's a lot of in-depth discussion on how to determine the oil level of your bike, the proper oil level. And what we like to say is, as a general rule, if you can see that oil level line, whether it's at the bottom, whether it's at the top, in the middle, as long as you can see it, it's probably okay to ride. Inside your manual, it's going to be detailed instructions on how to determine the proper oil level. Each bike's a little bit different. Most of these are the same. Whether it's cold or hot on the side stand or center stand, if you can see the oil level, it's okay. I'm going to have you come to this side of the bike. This bike is equipped with keyless ride. Here's your little key fob with the flip out blade. We're going to remove the back seat. It's a two-piece seat, and the lock core turns clockwise and counterclockwise. If I turn the key counterclockwise or towards the back of the bike, it's going to release the back seat. Underneath the seat is a tool kit. Essentially, Torx, a couple of open-end wrenches. The most surprising feature about this kit is the handle of the screwdriver is actually the oil fill removal tool. So this fits in the other side. I'll have Justin show you. It's a little triangular shape.
Oh yeah.
So it goes right in here.
Like a glove.
Come on. I'm going to remove the front seat by turning the lock cord to the front. You can just lift and pull backwards gently. This is what the bottom of the seat looks like. Mm-hmm. To adjust the height of the seat, there's two height adjustments. There's a front and a rear. You'll notice this one has the letter H.
Yep.
That means it's in the high position.
Okay.
This one is the rear adjuster. It has the letter H. It is also in the high position. To adjust into the low position, simply flip the rear adjuster over.
Easy breezy.
And the front one, you
watch that pinky, baby.
Push the little button and be very careful you don't pinch your fingers.
Mm-hmm.
You just flip it over to where it says L and slide it back in.
Nice.
Now you can reinstall the seat. These little loops here go over the rubber bumpers.
Slide in and pop in place.
Push it down. The rear seat also has two positions. It's a little tricky to get in place sometimes. Most of us are going to want to ride with the seat in the rear position for the most amount of cockpit space. So you're going to put these two tabs right here, and this pin goes in here.
Like a glove.
Please remember to remove your key before you ride off.
It's usually underneath the seat.
Since this bike is a keyless ride bike, there is a transmitter and a transponder in the key. There's a small watch battery inside the key fob. It's on occasion the battery will die, and if it happens to you, then there is a low frequency antenna under the rear of the bike. I'm so sorry for the bike being dirty.
Demo.
Right here,
See the circle?
there's essentially an antenna inside that circle. You would physically place this key close to the low frequency antenna, and it would allow you to turn it on with the button.
Nice. That's also where you would use your valet key.
Yep.
If you lose your main key fob, the valet key, which all 1200 GSs come with a valet key and one key fob. That's where you would utilize it also.
For the remainder of this video, I'm going to store the key in a GPS prep.
What if I wanted to use a GPS, Blair? How would I actually put that in there?
So,
Lockable GPS. It's very helpful.
it's a 3-stage process to get the GPS in and out. It's just very secure. You're going to unlock the GPS mount.
Yep.
Turn the safety, unlock the GPS mount is first, then turn the safety off,
Yep.
and then push the trigger.
So when you push the trigger, Blair, where's the little, there's a little red indicator.
See that little red thing? That means red is dead.
Red is dead.
That
Means it's not plugged in and it's gonna fire it off at you.
If you put your GPS in here and you can still see that red line a little bit, there's a good chance that it's gonna wind up in your lap or on the ground as you're going down the road. So just real firmly press it in there and make sure that red line disappears. Then you can turn your safety on and then turn the key
Pull it out.
out.
Okay.
If you ever bring your bike in for service and you have a GPS prep and keyless ride, we will store your key here just so we know where it is. I don't recommend riding the bike like this because it will fall out.
Very true.
You can turn the bike on by simply pressing the ignition button.
Keyless ride.
You turn the bike off the same way. Your dash may stay illuminated for a few seconds while the computers turn themselves off. That's totally normal. It is also normal for the dash or some of the lights to stay on for more than a minute. It's not common, but it will do that sometimes. We'll go through the dash now. So you have standard gauges, so an analog speedometer and tach. You have a fuel gauge on the left side above the little fuel emblem. All these lines indicate that it's almost full. Gear position or gear selection indicator, current time. On your left-hand grip, this is a multifunction switch. I wish there were a line in between the words trip and info. In between there should be a line. Trip controls the top half of this side of your gauge cluster. On the other side, info controls the bottom half. As you cycle through the trip, you'll notice this is the total odometer for the machine. Trip 1 and Trip 2 are resettable simply by pressing and holding the trip button. So if you're on Trip 1 and want to reset it, you just press and hold. It'll reset to 0. Range is distance till empty. It's relatively optimistic. You have 185 miles in this case until the tank is empty. There's a setup menu that allows you to change a few other things, but we can go into that later. We'll hit the info button. Info is on the bottom of the screen again. Engine temp is indicating the temperature of the coolant. So it's saying right now that the engine temp and coolant temp rather is 70 degrees. This little circle with the line through it means average. So it says that your constant mileage per gallon average is 42, and this is for one trip. So if you wanted to do an out and back, you could record your average miles per gallon on the way out and on the way back with number 2. This is average speed at 31.3 miles. You can reset this again by pressing and holding the bottom button. RDC, you'll notice the three-letter acronym RDC and PSI. RDC is a German term for essentially tire pressure monitor. So this is tire pressure monitor in pounds per square inch. Your front tire will be on the left, your rear tire will be on the right. Those will remain dashes until the bike moves at a relatively low rate of speed. I think it's 5 miles an hour. This bike has a very sophisticated tire pressure monitor system that incorporates a thermometer in the tire pressure monitors, and it will automatically adjust the reading here based on the air pressure, or excuse me, the air temperature in your tires. Again, this bike recommends 36 and 42. If you'll look in your owner's manual, there's a really neat passage talking about tire pressure monitor and the inaccuracy of other devices that are not BMWs. It's quite entertaining. This is an oil level indicator. There are 3 dashes indicated now. There has to be kind of a perfect scenario where this will tell you whether your oil level is good or not. Oil level being the amount of oil volume in the engine. It will indicate whether it is good or low after the bike is at operating temperature, after it has gone a consistent speed and distance, and after the bike has not had the oil sloshed around in it. So if you're running through twisties, it's not going to take a reading. Most of the time, especially in Western North Carolina, you'll notice that this is going to be 3 dashes. Occasionally, it will say good or low. You have the date, and in the setup menu, you can change the date format if you'd like. You want me to go over the setup menu while we're here?
Yeah, we can touch base and just... So to enter into the setup menu, Blair will just hold the trip with his left hand. It goes in.
This is saying, it's asking you if you want the GPS time to be on the bike's dash. So if we clip the GPS in, it's GPS accurate time. Would you like it to use that time? Now the GPS will change based on time zone, which will update it on the dash. Otherwise, we can turn it off and just set the time for whatever we want. So if you'd rather your clock read 5 minutes fast, you can do that. Otherwise, it'll be accurate off the GPS.
Clock, date.
Yeah, and then this
Econ shift.
Econ shift is a courtesy shift light that tells you when to shift if you want the most amount of economy or fuel economy. We leave it off. Brightness allows you to change the backlight brightness. We find that most people, when they come in, have it on 4 or 5. RDC is your tire pressure monitor system. If you are one that likes to run a lower air pressure than recommended, this allows you to turn off the tire pressure monitor so you don't have a warning light in your face. This is a basic setup for how the trip and info are set up. You can cycle through it to change the position and layout. And to exit, you'll just press and hold on the exit screen the trip button again. You'll notice at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, there's an image that looks like a battery in parentheses. That is telling us that the bike is uncomfortably low as far as voltage goes. We've been playing with the bike all day inside. I've just recently hooked it up to a battery tender. If you see that while you're playing with the bike, go ahead and start the bike. The charging system will recharge the battery pretty quickly. But if you're ever out in the garage playing with it and you see that indicating, if you see that indicator come on, just turn the bike on. Obviously, open your garage door though. There's 2 flashing lights, one for traction control and one for ABS. I'm going to have Justin scroll over to this multi-switch. There's an ABS and traction control icon on the button, along with a suspension icon. We're going to talk about these 2 real quick. So right now, those 2 lights are flashing to say that they have not completed a self-diagnostic check. So traction control and ABS are right this second operating as they're supposed to. Flashing means that they have not done their diagnostic check. When we start the bike, start the engine, and start rolling a couple miles an hour, they will do the system will perform the diagnostic check, and then the lights will turn off if everything is in good operating condition. If those lights remain on, one or both, then that means that system is not operating properly and you will not have access to the features of that system. For instance, if the ABS light were to remain illuminated solid, you would not have ABS brakes. You would most likely still have a braking system, just not ABS. Or if the traction control light remained on, you would not have traction control.
And just in terms, we call those dummy lights. So if Blair on the left-hand control turns on the hazards, you're going to notice the hazard lights come on and everything lights up.
This red light is telling us that the hazard lights are on, as opposed to the turn signals.
Mm-hmm.
If I just turn a turn signal on, you don't get the red triangle.
Yep.
You can turn your ABS off and traction control actively, like if you would like to, I don't know, have more control over the back end of the bike off pavement. You can make the decision on your own to turn ABS or traction control or both off. There's a sequence of button presses and holds to turn them off. I'll just give you a quick example. Like if you wanted to turn your traction control off, you would just press and hold the ABS traction control button, and now traction control is off. To turn it back on, you just press and hold, and it's back on. If you have any questions about the operation of that, just call the shop and we'll walk you through it. Cruise control is the most wonderful thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
To turn the cruise control on so it is active and ready for you to set the speed, you simply slide the switch over. This is the on position, off position. Once it's in the on position, I believe you can set the traction control, you can set your speed as long as you're in a gear higher than second, so third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. And there is a minimum speed that you have to be going, and I honestly don't remember what that is. To set the speed, you simply press the set button forward. That will hold the speed you've selected. Your speedometer will indicate the current speed, and then over on this side will be an indication of the speed you've selected. Those can vary. For instance, if you're going uphill or downhill, you might notice that your actual speed is higher or lower than the selected speed by a couple of miles per hour. If you wanted to accelerate, you can in 1 mile per hour increments by tapping the button one time per each mile an hour increment desired. You can also decelerate by pulling it towards you. The cruise control system will cancel by virtually any input of a control. If you pull the clutch in, tap the brake, tap a rear brake, or roll the micro switch forward in the throttle, it will cancel the cruise control.
The easiest and smoothest way we've found and decided is definitely to pull the clutch in.
Correct.
It reduces the amount of engine braking and makes it a pretty clean transition from cruise to non-cruise.
Agreed. On the back side of this multi-switch, it's a flash to pass switch. If by pulling it in you flash your high beam, to push it away from you, it turns your high beams on and leaves them on.
Brightness.
Very bright. While we're here, I'm going to show you how to adjust your levers. BMW is very cognizant of the fact that some people have larger hands than others, and they give you a 4-position adjuster for your brake and clutch lever. You're simply going to push the lever away from the handlebars in this fashion, and then you can move the adjuster to where you need. There's a numerical indication, 1, 2, 3, and 4, based on the distance desired. Feel free to play around with those. Something I booger up sometimes is I try to turn the adjuster without pushing the lever away from me. It will sometimes work, but it is certainly easier to push the lever away and turn the dial. Justin, what am I missing? Oh, let's go to the other multi.
Right control, here we go.
Your horn is over here, sorry about that. On this side, you have an emergency stop switch and start switch. You have your ride modes button and then heated grips. The heated grip icon is quite interesting to me. If you press the heated grip button, you'll notice on the dash there's this really odd icon with 2 dots, and it's essentially a grip with heat coming off of it, heat waves. By tapping the button again, you'll notice that one of the dots goes away. By tapping it again, the entire icon goes away. So you have high, low, and off. Ride modes is one of the most fascinating things about this machine. This bike is equipped with Ride Modes Pro. Your bike may have Ride Modes, and it may have the Ride Modes Pro plug. If you have any questions about how to use that plug, where to store it, or when to use it, feel free to call the shop. I'll just run through the options here. By tapping the mode button, it will bring up an indication at the bottom of the screen as to which mode you can select. If you leave it alone, it will select that mode and then indicate which mode it's in above right here. So above the clock. So I'm currently in rain mode. If I tap the mode button, I can scroll through the different optional modes. Rain is essentially a very soft throttle response. You still get full power, but it's a very soft throttle response with a heightened sense of awareness for traction control and ABS.
It will not let the rear tire ever spin faster than the front tire.
Correct.
Yeah.
In road mode, you have full power, but instead of having a soft throttle response like rain mode, you have what I'd call a standard throttle response. Also with traction control and ABS. Dynamic is all the beans as quickly as possible. So in dynamic mode, you'll notice that your throttle response is relatively quick. You have less intervention of traction control. You still have traction control, but it will allow some wheel speed discrepancy from the rear tire to the front tire. Enduro allows a greater amount of wheel speed discrepancy.
Slows down the throttle timing.
My understanding is that it does soften your your throttle response. And then you have Enduro Pro Mode. Enduro Pro Mode is a quick throttle response with virtually no intervention from the traction control on the rear wheel and virtually no intervention from the ABS on the rear wheel. It does remain, your ABS does stay on the front wheel though. If you're unsure if you have an a Ride Modes Pro plug, there's an icon that indicates that this bike is not only equipped, but it is installed currently.
That's installed underneath the front seat there.
When you turn your motorcycle off, I'd like to see you not use this red switch just for battery's sake. I have occasionally turned the bike off with the stop switch and forgotten to turn the bike off at the ignition. So instead of using the stop switch to turn the bike off, when you come to a stop, if you'll just get in the habit of turning the ignition off at the button, it'll preserve your battery. You have a short period of time to open your fuel cap once you've turned your motorcycle off. On the keyless ride bike, only on the keyless ride bike rather. If you're equipped with keyless ride, to open the fuel cap, you can simply lift the lever forward and open it. We recommend that you put the nozzle in as far as it'll go and only pull the lever about halfway until you trust whether the fuel is going to stay in there or not. Each pump is different, obviously. And as a general rule, if you'll not top the thing off, when the fuel pump cuts off, that's a good indication that it's pretty full. If you overfill it and potentially leave it out in the sun and expands, it could run out into the charcoal canister, which is what that system is designed for. But unless you're doing a long trip and you're worried about fuel, don't top it off. Not necessary. When you close the lid, I use both thumbs to push down and pull up on the lever at the same time. Let's see, Justin, what can I add for you?
I think we've gone over everything front to back. As all new motorcycles, you know, you want to be weary and sure of the tires. So new tires, so you take your time getting to know them. Takes about 100 or 200 miles to kind of get that
releasing agent off the tires.
Brakes will be a little bit sticky at first until they seat in. Other than that, I think that's an R1200GS water-cooled non-TFT display. Blair Harris, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you guys for watching.